Good morning. Replace perfection with action. Why you're still waiting to start. You need to stop hiding behind perfection. You need to ask better questions. You need to make bolder moves and take uncomfortable action. No slides here, just truth. Let me ask you something straight up. Um, Pretty brutal, but let me ask you, what the fuck are you waiting for? Seriously, the perfect CRM? Are you waiting for the best time of year? Or you're waiting for a dialer that knows how to close for you? Or the right Instagram strategy? You waiting for confidence? That's not what you're waiting for. You're waiting for permission. You're waiting for certainty. You're waiting until you feel ready. But let me, here's the punch in the face about all of that. Ready? Ready's a lie. Ready's a lie that your comfort zone tells you so it doesn't have to change. You're not stuck because you're missing something. You're stuck because you don't think what you have is good enough to start. Um, there's a high cost to chasing perfection. Um, so let's just break this down for a bit. What is perfection really doing for you? It gives you an excuse to delay. It keeps you planning, instead of executing. It keeps your business looking organized while it's secretly just falling apart in the background. It perfection, it lets you stay safe, it lets you stay small, and it lets you stay broke. The perfectionist isn't committed to growth. They're addicted to control. I've seen agents spend, 6, 8, 9 months to perfect their listing presentation, yet they've got no listings. I see agents who study scripts and do the role play, but they don't call anybody. I've seen teams who build workflows that they never use. You don't need the perfect plan. You need a better question. You need a bolder move. Better questions create better outcomes for you. So let me tell you what I mean. Most agents ask, what's the best way to start? What's the right CRM? What should my daily schedule look like? And that's all surface level. That's safe. That's lazy. Start asking questions that create tension. What conversation am I avoiding that could change my business today? What have I convinced myself I need to learn before I act? If somebody followed me around with a camera all day, would they see a business owner or would they see an employee who is scared shitless? The quality of your questions that dictates the boldness of your moves. Um, Action is greater than perfection always. You know, my shitty video will always outperform your perfect non-existing video. So let's talk about action. Um, you'll never outperform the amount of uncomfortable action you're willing to take. Forget perfect. Let's just get messy. Make that awkward video. Don't even look at it. Boom, hit send. You know, write that DM and boom, hit send. Call that expired listing if you're allowed to in your state. You know, go live when your hair isn't done. Really? Look at me. You know, knock the door even if you get rejected, because every rejection you get, every no is a step closer to yes. You know, host the open house that no one comes to. Work on your sphere then. You know, the agent who acts sloppy wins over the agent who waits for perfection. You know, because while you're planning, they're practicing, they're doing. You know, while you're researching, they're falling forward. Yeah, they're making mistakes, but that's where you learn. So while you're tweaking your logo, they're getting referrals. You know, clarity comes from doing, not from thinking. There's a fear behind your perfection, so let's cut deeper into this. Perfectionism, it's not about having high standards. Perfectionism, it's about fear of judgment. I mean, that's just plain and simple. What if I look stupid? What if I stumble over my words? What if I fail? What are people going to think? Fuck that. Who cares? You know, they're not paying your bills. You think you're protecting your image, but you're really protecting your ego. And you know what? That ego is costing you big time. Your ego, it's costing you listings. It's costing you closings. You know, it's costing you confidence, and it's costing you freedom. So here's the real question. Are you more committed to your comfort or your calling to be great? You know, you weren't called to be average. You weren't called just to blend in. You were called to lead. You were called to show others what's possible through your courage. You know what? And courage never waits for the perfect timing. You know, courage creates the timing. So make some bold moves. Make some big moves. You know, here's what I want you to remember. Replace perfect with practice. The more you practice, the better you're going to get. You know, replace your fear with curiosity. If you're scared to ask the question, to ask different questions with curiosity, and you'll learn. You know, replace waiting to do something with actually doing it, because action creates momentum. You know, you're just one bold move away from momentum. You're not 10, not a full strategy, just one. You know, the agents that are at the top, they didn't start with better tools. They started with better questions and a bold move. So what's yours? You know, what are you going to do today that scares you a little bit but grows you a lot? You know, don't you dare leave here and go back to thinking about it. Because, you know, thinking about it isn't going to get it done. You know what to do. You've always known there's only one thing left, and it is to stop waiting. Replace perfection with action starting now. Peace.